everybody, what's up? Thomas here once again, and today, well, it's that time once again. It's time for VC Andrews Critiquer. I'll just stick with VC Andrews. Keep it short and simple, you know? Anyway, so, yeah, he's asked me to do a reaction for him, so here we are. And today, well, things are getting a lot bizarre, because we got the top 10 episodes of Disney's Teacher's Pet. I think I actually remember this series. I don't remember actually watching it, though. Again, long time, so... Anyway, pretty sure it's self-explanatory. Pet goes to school. Literally. At least that's what I remember from the show. You'll see what I mean in a minute. Like I said, so, top 10. Again, I'm not going to be able to give much opinions until after he describes the video, considering I barely even remember the show. So, anyway, wish me luck, because here we go. Be sure to like, subscribe for more. Hope you enjoyed. Let's check it out.
Hello fans, it's the VC Andrews Critiquer.
Okay,
oh boy, I am so excited for today's review. We're going to be looking at the top 10 episodes of my favorite cartoon ever from childhood. Yes, a show I actually liked more than SpongeBob SquarePants, unlike pretty much every other freaking 2000s kid. Anyway, the show in question was a Disney Channel series called Teacher's Pet. Here's the recap. Leonard Helperman is not excited to start 4th grade. Being the class dork is hard enough, but his mother just happens to be his teacher this year, and let's just say that Mary Lou Helperman is one of those parents that fails to notice when their kid exceeds the age of 5.
Now, Doodlebug, listen to Mother!
So Leonard knows his 4th grade year is bound to be a living hell. His dog Spot, however, voiced by Nathan Lane, is depressed for the opposite reason. He finds it an abomination that society won't let dogs pursue an education and expects his species to stay at home all day and bark at traffic. In other words, he wants to be part of that world. So Spot pretty much says, to hell with species norms, I want to be educated.
Screw you guys, I'm going to school.
Some of Leonard's dirty clothes to disguise himself as a human 4th grader named Scott Leadready II. And thankfully, Fallon D. Roosevelt Elementary doesn't require their students to be registered or even for their parents to meet with them first. Hey, suspend your disbelief, there'd be no show otherwise. And Spot/Scott not only manages to break grounds by being the first dog ever to attend school, but also by becoming the teacher's pet and the most popular kid in 4th grade. You gotta admit, it's really hard to do both those things in school, so kudos to the mutt. But things get a little complicated when Leonard notices he's wearing his Spot Helperman collar, so to keep Leonard from reporting him for dog napping, Spot has to come clean with his master, and Leonard takes it with quiet dignity and grace.
What the hell?
Quiet dignity and grace.
Yeah, not so much.
No, he's initially a little disturbed by this revelation and wants everything to be normal again with his dog back at home being, well, a dog. But Spot makes it clear he has no intention of dropping out of school, so Leonard eventually decides to just live with the fact that his dog can talk is posing as the new kid in school. And the rest of the show varies from Scott and Leonard trying to cover up Scott's secret, Scott's dog instincts conflicting with him pretending to be a human, or just regular social issues that kids have to deal with. Either way, there would always be a life lesson learned at the end of each adventure.
And again, it's Disney.
And like I said before, I was obsessed with this series as a kid. I loved the freaky trip out animation, I loved the witty adult jokes, and most of all, I loved the characters. Oh, and it also got a big screen movie, which for now I'll just say, to say I was excited to see in theaters would be the biggest understatement in the history of humankind. But anyway, let's get right into it. Which 10 episodes of this series had the most charm, humor, and heart? These are the top 10 episodes of Teacher's Pet. Number 10.
Alright, first up.
Always knock the postman twice. Yes, it's a well-known fact that all dogs view mail carriers as the equivalent of Adolf Hitler. Some dogs might be able to tolerate cats. Hell, some can even tolerate the groomer. But mailmen and dogs are always on shakier terms than Trump and Biden. And this episode, as you probably guessed, has this natural anti-mailman nature of dogs come to bite Spot. No pun intended. The episode starts with career day at school, with Teddy's dad presenting a guessing game for what his job is. Scott quickly guesses to his horror that he's, gasp!
A mailman!
And immediately starts voicing the view that all dogs have towards mailmen.
All letter carriers are evil, scheming thieves! That man may pretend to deliver your mail, but that's all a ruse! He's just trying to figure out how to break into your homes!
But his canine views naturally don't translate to acceptable behavior for humans, especially in an elementary school, so Scott naturally gets detention for his hate speech. So Leonard spends the rest of the episode trying to prove to Spot that mailmen aren't pure evil terrorists, while Spot tries to prove that they are. What I love about this episode so much is, besides being a brilliant idea for this show's premise, is that it's also very obviously a commentary on not judging a group of people until you really get to know them, something America has really had trouble with for, well, always really. The scene where Spot is viewing mailmen's harmless activities as those of criminals are very obviously a satire of how racist police view minorities harmlessly going about their business.
See?
He's breaking into that house.
He's not breaking in if he lives there, Spot. See?
Plus, Spot's irrational hatred of mailmen is pretty frickin' hilarious. Nathan Lane really hams it up when capturing the hatred that dogs have for the profession, and I love how Scott goes into a history of how anyone who delivers mail, or the time periods equivalent to such, have always been conspiring against dogs. Plus, Spot otherwise perfectly understands how human society works, so the fact that he would still have beef for mail carriers is just hilarious. But what's really awesome about this episode is how Spot comes to accept mailmen. When Spot's leading a dog revolution against the city mailman, and Leonard defends him saying he wants to be a mailman too when he grows up, Spot realizes that if he hates all mailmen, then he'll have to hate Leonard too, and he refuses to do so and convinces the other dogs to back down, though it helps that the city letter carriers bring the dogs pizza and bones. I'm going to be talking a lot about the amazing chemistry Spot and Leonard have, but this is one of the finest examples of that love that could turn even the greatest of biases into tolerance. Not the greatest episode by any means, but a great idea for the series, a great commentary on prejudice, and also a great display of Spot and Leonard's great connection. Oh yeah, and this line is also pretty frickin' funny.
Wouldn't it be fascinating if somehow a dog could transform himself into a little boy? Well, I am not going to give away my best ideas for science fiction short stories.
Sorry, Mary Lou, but you're a little late.
You're living
Don't feel bad, though. Nickelodeon was, too. Although that's a story I don't have time to go into now. Next one.
Oh, sure.
Number 9. Being Mrs. Leadready. Spot may have been fortunate enough that the school doesn't require students to be registered by their parents, but not having parents, at least not human ones, was bound to catch up to him eventually, and this is the episode where it does, specifically when parent-teacher night comes along. And seeing how Scott has no clue where his birth mother is, hell, he never even met her, decides that Leonard, who turns out can do a pretty convincing female voice.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Don't take it hard, Lenny. I get mistaken for a lady 8 out of 10 times at my HOA customer service job on the phone. Anyway, because of this, Scott goads Leonard into playing the part of his mother, but it turns out Spot thought Leonard would chicken out and came dressed in a drag as well. Anyway, Mary Lou has a wonderful time visiting with Mrs. Leadready and invites her and Scott over to their house for dinner tomorrow, which Spot immediately accepts upon hearing that there will be pot roast, only realizing the problem with that afterwards. Whoopsie!
Oh, curse you, pot roast, you savory, moist temptress!
But now is not the time for regrets, as Spot now has to be himself, Scott, and Mrs. Leadready all on the same night at once. So what's there for me to praise with this episode? Well, besides being another great idea for this show's premise of a dog dressing as a 4th grade boy, Spot's attempt to be 3 different personas is just as frickin' hilarious as it probably sounds. But that's far from the extent of this episode's comedy material. When Leonard and Spot run into each other cross-dressing at the school, they do a Groucho Marx mirror routine. Overused, but still one of the funniest gags in media history, so who gives a crap? Stricker falling in love with Spot in a drag is also pretty frickin' hilarious, especially seeing how he hates dogs so much. Plus, take a look at this. Don't you just miss the good old days when kids' cartoons were loaded with not-so-subtle, dirty humor? But this episode does have some pretty strong heart, too. When Scott asks Leonard why he was willing to go through with dressing as his mom for the conference after all, Leonard says it's because they're best friends and he wants to always be there for him when he needs him. Plus, at the end of the episode, when Spot has collapsed from the stress of attempting to be 3 different people at once...
Not the personalities, the bacon liver wraps. I should have stopped at 6.
Well, I stand corrected. But at any rate, Mary Lou comforts him, at which point he realizes that Mary Lou is basically his mother, and even sings a sweet song about it.
Even though her sweet nose isn't cold, wet and black,
Ew.
I'm her baby.
A great message for adopted children about how family doesn't have to mean that you share the same blood, or even the same species for that matter. True family are those who love you. While far from the best episode, it was still a pretty damn good premise for the show, and did have some very strong heart and laughs, especially when topped off with this.
And trades with me, so I can sleep in the top bunk once in a while, too.
No.
Night, Spot.
Good night, Leonard.
Oh,
Nice try,
all
Spot.
right.
For once.
Ew!
What?
I just laid on a chew toy.
Leonard. Damn it.
Number 8.
Hey.
Yes!
Fifi. This is a very interesting episode, and not just because Bernadette Peters guest stars as the titular Fifi. The 4th grade class is excited because the circus is in town tonight.
Hey.
Mrs. Helperman so much so that she agrees to not give the kids any homework and just let them go to the circus. Leonard's psyched to see the clowns, and Scott lays his eyes on the circus's Parisian acrobatic poodle Fifi, and it's love at first sight. And it turns out she likes Spot too and asks him on a date. And the date goes so wonderful that Fifi invites Spot to join her at the circus. More info on that a bit later. So what makes this episode so neat is, besides being one of the few episodes that has little to nothing to do with school or kid social issues, is this is the first time in the series where Spot has ever genuinely been in love. I mean, he's often relished the attention of his female classmates, but has never expressed flat-out feelings for any of them. Granted, I don't think Disney would have allowed that for obvious reasons, but okay, fair point, but Spot is confirmed to be an adult in dog years, which we'll go into a bit later, so it would have been pedophilia. Anyway, Spot doesn't just fall in love with this poodle, he really falls in love with her. The performance is especially impressive considering it's from openly gay Nathan Lane.
Fifi.
Mon ami.
Dum-dum. Fifi. Mon papa. Jiffy.
Actually, that's kinda debatable, but this episode is also good on laughs too. During the date, Spot and Fifi try to pull a Lady and the Tramp at an Italian restaurant, only to get a taste, no pun intended, of how a restaurant owner would actually react in that situation.
Sonny, A, the board of health would shut me down in 3 seconds. B, this is a high-class joint. We don't call it a spaghetti. We call it a pasta. And 3, dogs don't have lips. That skinny black line, it's not a lip.
My deceased poodle Annie would disagree with that last notion, kind sir. But thankfully, Youngie does manage to convince her father to let the dogs touch lips with pasta at his Taiwanese restaurant for fear that Leonard might injure himself while doing a clown stunt to try and convince them to let the dogs dine. Oh yeah, Youngie is basically this girl who supposedly hates Leonard but is implied to secretly be in love with him a la Hilga from Hey Arnold. Oh yeah, and apparently Leonard's long life dream is to be a clown.
A clown?
Oh, the shame of it.
And I thought I was a huge dork. On top of that, he's a pretty crappy clown.
Warko, Warko, Warko! Whoa!
Yeah.
But this episode also has some pretty ballsy drama. Spot comes dangerously close to running off with Fifi, and seeing how much Spot loves being a boy and going to school, and more importantly loves Leonard, that's really just, what the F? I won't use the actual word in case there are kids watching this, by the way. Hell, even the tiny-ass pretty boy is devastated that Spot's leaving. Sweet to see he really does care for his friend. Of course Spot can't leave Leonard, but he's still pretty sad about having to say au revoir to Fifi. And before you ask, no, I'm not going to spoil how their farewell goes, but it's just both so gentle and yet so cruel to poor Spot at the same time. I know that really doesn't make sense, but if you watch the episode yourself, I'm sure you'll understand what I mean. You just feel so happy yet so awful for the poor canine when you see what their ultimate fate is. But again, that makes for some of the best drama in the show. My one real gripe with this episode is that even though it has Bernadette Peters as Fifi, she never sings even once. I mean, it's frickin' Broadway star Bernadette Peters, who's practically a living embodiment of singing, and she's paired with the super talented singer Nathan Lane here. How could these two have not had a romantic duet? But that's just a minor nitpick in what's otherwise a very funny, emotional, and unique episode for the series. Actually, no it's not. The creators may have stiffed us a song from Bernadette Peters, but I'm not going to. You know what? Play any song from her whatsoever. As long as it's from Peters, there's no way it could.
You were saying?
Okay, never mind. Next one, please.
Next! Yeah, the less we talk about the Barney movie, the better. Thank you. Jesus. Oof. Honestly, I'm not sure I'll be looking up the show after this, because, I don't know, just seems a little too, feels just old. Still, I don't know why. The art style kind of reminded me of South Park in a way, and I'm not sure that's the point, but still. I think it was just the out-of-the-world imagery, he said, but still, interesting. So, a little something there. Teacher's Night, Carnival, and the, well, you know, Mailman, which, again, I never really knew why. I mean, it's not like we talk to dogs like, you know, Leonard can, or Scott. But, oh well, who knows. Well, anyway, next 4, let's check it out. Number 7.
Number 7. Inspector Leadready II. You'll note that this is one of the few episodes in this series where Nathan Lane couldn't make the time to voice Scott here due to him being in the original Broadway production of The Producers. Don't worry though, Kevin Schoen could do a damn good impression of Lane. Hell, he had previously replaced him as Timon in the Timon and Pumbaa spin-off series. But anyway, all the 4th graders are making custom-made maps of certain South American countries and dressing in the traditional clothing of that country. And all the maps are shit except for Leonard's love interest, Leslie Dunklings. But after recess that day, they find the map broken and Leonard holding the pieces. Even though Leonard insists he was just trying to fix it to impress Leslie, the evidence is overwhelmingly against the kid since he was especially jealous of Leslie's awesome Brazil map and even said during recess, the most convenient time for the crime since no one was in the classroom, that he wasn't going to worry about it anymore and was gonna do it. And not only does it look like Leonard's lost any possible chance of winning over Leslie, but Principal Strickler, aka the human clone of Principal Mazer from a Goofy movie, right down to his voice actor Wallace Shawn, threatens Leonard with the most severe sentence any kid could imagine.
So recess until college?
Oh, how horrible!
Yeesh.
Wait, recess only goes up to 5th grade. Yeah, that punishment's kind of faulty in hindsight. But anyway, Scott believes he's innocent and takes on the persona of Scott Locke Holmes to prove it. So yeah, this episode is a whodunit, and it's no Who Shot Mr. Burns, but it was still good enough to earn a spot on my top 10 episode list. For one, there are some really damn good jokes here.
Look at Leonard. He chose Uruguay because he wanted to learn more about its people, not because it's next to Leslie Dunkling's Brazil.
Dare I say it again?
Yeah.
Touché.
You said
Not a word, Ian.
I'd rather
Shut up, Ian.
Leonard than Trevor.
I knew somehow this would come back to me.
I did it!
You admit you broke Leslie's map.
Nah, I just wanted Leonard to get his hopes up.
But don't worry, not all the jokes are at Leonard's expense.
You have to get up pretty early before morning announcements to trick Principal Strickler.
You're saying?
And before you ask, no, I'm not going to spoil who the culprit was, but there are subtle clues all throughout the episode about that, and how do I describe this? You kind of have to watch them all to have really any chance of deducing the culprit, at least before Scott does at the very end. But once you do, there's a decent chance you can figure it out on your own. The one hint I will give you is, think of Murder on the Orient Express.
Yeah. Oh, they all did it?
If you're familiar with that work, then I'm pretty sure that immediately gives away who it is. Another thing worth mentioning is, this episode's got some pretty risque stuff in it. Not requiring students to be registered by their parents is one thing, but allowing them to come dressed as a dictator for a school project is...
Argentina.
nuts to be delicate. Also, this episode probably has the most risque joke in the entire series.
Where?
Lake Titicaca.
First of all, let me congratulate you for not sniggering at the mention of the lake with the unfortunate name.
Good night, everybody.
The last thing I want to mention is, this episode is another great display of the loyalty the Helpermans have to one another. Mary Lou and Scott don't think for 1 second that Leonard was the culprit, and Scott's even willing to risk no recess until college for himself as well to help his friend. That was a pretty selfless move. Again, as whodunit episodes go, this episode is a pretty good one. And seriously, a kid, well, a fake kid, but you get the point, dressing as a dictator? I don't think we've ever seen that in cartoons before. Touche.
You were saying?
You said tushy again.
No, touche. Also, yeah, okay, that I actually do remember. Orient the Phantom Express, I think if I remember correctly, again, spoilers for anyone who hasn't read the book, but at this point, kind of required to read, but anyway. I think if I remember correctly, when I looked it up, apparently everyone had a hand in it. or something like that. I think in this case it was kind of a indirectly one. Like, you know how they were just like sliding across? Like, eventually, you know, if they go over enough, it's just gonna bloop and break in half, right? Sorry for spoiling it, but I'm pretty sure that's my guess. But could be wrong. Anyway, moving on.
Number 6. The Blight Before Christmas.
Ooh.
This was the series' second Christmas special, and while their first one is vastly superior, and thus earned a much higher spot on this list, this one is pretty good too. Christmas Vacation has arrived, but Scott and Leonard are a bit blue. No pun intended with Scott. Leonard because his mom always buys him educational or baby toys, not to mention he got stuck with Ian as a Secret Santa this year. Ugh. And Scott because he's only getting dog presents for his Spot identity and no human boy presents. So upon finding there's a $500 reward being offered for a lost dog named Moby Dog, I've heard lamer pet names, Spot decides to use his canine sense of smell to track the dog down, collect the money as Scott, and buy his own presents. Meanwhile, Leonard hears about a new hit video game that's the must-have toy for Christmas.
So tell your folks, buy me, Bonestorm, or go to hell!
Well, okay, the ad doesn't say that, but it is still very enticing. So he begs his mom for it, but she says it's too expensive, prompting him to shoplift at the store, breaking his
that's Bart.
Oh wait, no, still wrong Christmas episode involving wanting a video game, but that one is still a Simpsons classic. Give it a watch sometime. No, on the contrary, Mary Lou pretty much says, "Yep, you're getting that game," prompting him to exploit this by scheduling all his classmates to come over and play it. So what makes this episode so great is we see the love the Helperman family has for one another. Mary Lou realizes that promising her son the hottest new Christmas gift in advance was probably not the brightest idea in hindsight. But nonetheless, she goes to literally every single store in the entire city to try and find a copy, but alas and alack, they're all sold out.
Nothing.
Even a whole truck of the games is cleaned out by other parents in a split second. But still, seeing Mary Lou put all this time and effort into getting Leonard the Christmas gift of his dreams is just so endearing. But Leonard gets a chance to shine too. So Mary Lou breaks the bad news to Lenny that he's not getting the game, and he's stressed because he already promised the kids in advance they could come over and play it, and knows his reputation is now going to be worse than a fruitcake. But get this, Mary Lou learns that there is a store that has one copy left, but they close in 30 minutes. But upon learning that Spot is stranded out in the blizzard, Leonard doesn't have to think for 1 second about which to choose. His dog means much more to him than his reputation or the best video game ever, and this line is proof.
Spot! Oh, please. If I can just get my Spot back, I'll never ask for another toy.
Speaking of which, let's talk about Spot. So Spot eventually tracks down Moby, but it turns out he went missing to start a family.
I don't know anything about birthing puppies, Miss Charlotte!
Spot initially doesn't give a rat's ass and just wants to get Moby back to his human family and score $500. But upon seeing how happy they are, and the fact that they named one of their pups after him, Spot is willing to go out into the freezing blizzard to find help for their puppy so they don't freeze to death. And hey, at least Leonard and his mom went out into this blizzard in a nice warm car. Spot had to go out in the freezing cold butt naked.
Nothing.
That's dedication, my friend. So you probably guessed what happens next. Leonard and Mary Lou find Spot, he shows them the freezing dog family, they take them back to their owners, but Mary Lou won't hear of accepting the reward. But thankfully, it turns out the owner works for the company who made the game and gives Leonard a free copy of the game as thanks, and Mary Lou does allow him to accept that. Well, not chock full of gags, except for this hilarious subplot I forgot to mention of Pretty Boy and Mr. Jolly being Secret Santas to each other. Yeah, that's just as hilarious as it sounds. Nor being nearly as awesome as the other Christmas special.
Side plots with Jolly Boy are,
this episode still has a lot of holiday heart, showing that the Helpermans will go to any length to help one another.
And number 5?
Number 5.
Really gotta love the family bonds here.
You can't bite City Hall. Out of all the ideas the show came up with specifically for its premise of a dog pretending to be a 4th grade kid, this one was definitely the best. Mary Lou announces to the class that the mayor's considering building a new skateboard park and wants one of her students to represent the city kids as a whole about whether or not this should be done. And seeing how Scott has much charisma as Harold Hill, not to mention singing talent, Scott's chosen to be that representative. And while he's at it, upon learning from the other dogs that their beloved dog park is being torn down, Spot promises a Scott to charismatically speak against that at City Hall as well. But yeah, you probably already guessed why they want to tear down the dog park. So Spot now has to choose between siding with his human friends and encouraging the skate park to be open, or staying loyal to his actual species and demand the dog park stay open. Again, this episode's premise was so freaking brilliant, as it really puts Spot in his first dilemma about whether his true loyalty lies with dogs or humans, and Nathan Lane honestly does a phenomenal job at conveying Spot's stress over trying to figure out who to side with.
I don't know what I stand for. I don't even know who I am anymore. I'm Scott. I'm Spot. I'm Scott. I'm Spot. I'm Scott. I'm Scotty.
Well, it's the average life of politicians, I think.
You can still really feel how torn he is over choosing whom to side with. It doesn't help that literally no one in this episode offers any support to our poor canine friend. The closest thing is Pretty Boy suggesting that he forget both the dog and the skate park and just turn the place into a bird sanctuary. Brilliant plan, Bird Brain.
Really,
but
Bird Brain?
surely Leonard must be some help, right?
Let me guess.
No. On the contrary, Leonard kind of abuses his
park.
power as Scott's master and basically says that if he favors the dog park over the skate park, he can't continue going to school since he's not a true kid. Ouch. Hell, even his own subconscious seems to be trolling the poor dog.
Whenever you have a problem you can't solve...
What?
Someone should have paid attention in class and not wanted to run out to recess so fast.
I shall give you the answer.
Let me guess. No.
Get up!
Another awesome thing about this episode is, it probably has the best parody of Trouble from the Music Man since Marge vs. the Monorail, and it's sung by the brilliant singer Nathan Lane. It's playing in the background right now, but here's a quick, clearer snippet.
That's dogs with a D and that rhymes with me, because I figured out what the answer would be. I broke it down and I did it in order. Hey, look at that collie. Is she a border?
So you may be wondering, as that clip revealed, how does Spot find the answer? Well, when Scott is stressing at City Hall and can't put off announcing his decision any longer, he remembers how Mary Lou taught the class, as well as my younger self, PEMDAS, or...
Please excuse my dear Aunt Sally!
Basically, it's an acronym to break down the mathematical order of operations. In other words, breaking down a big problem into tiny bits to try and determine the solution. So that's what Scott does here, proposing that it be a skate park 3 days a week and a dog park 3 days a week. And the last day, that's to be a bird sanctuary like Pretty Boy wanted. This episode may not be the funniest in the series, but its premise was just so frickin' ingenious, giving us the first time Spot had to decide between standing on 2 legs or 4 legs, and topped off with a phenomenal Music Man spoof and teaching me about PEMDAS, which helped me come prepared when I first learned in school. This episode more than earned a spot on this list.
Okay, I'm not gonna ask about that.
Number 4.
Yes!
The Flipper.
They call him Flipper.
No, not that
the
Flipper.
dolphin.
This episode is great for being probably Leonard's biggest shining moments in the entire series. Basically, the kids at school are starting a new game that's basically marbles but with baseball cards instead of, well, marbles. Anyway, whoever tosses their card closest to the center of the circle wins the other player's cards. Leonard naturally starts out as god-awful at it, while Scott is naturally phenomenal, but Scott feels bad that his best friend and master is so down, so as Spot, he decides to teach him a secret for how he's so awesome a card tosser via an awesome song, which is playing in the background, by the way. Namely, screw your thumb when tossing cards, which of course dogs don't even have, and flick your wrists in a certain direction in the air to ensure it hits the circle. But anyway, once he discovers this secret, Leonard becomes the best card tosser in the school, winning everyone but Scott's cards, including those of former card tossing champion Principal Strickler, with a move of flipping his card in a manner that knocks all the other cards out of the circle, and thus is dubbed the Flipper. Scott's initially happy for his student, but the two eventually turn from Miyagi and Daniel to Shifu and Tai Lung, as Scott refuses to believe that Leonard, or anyone for that matter, was actually skilled enough to have intentionally planned that awesome shot of knocking Strickler's cards out of the circle. Leonard is pissed that Scott doubts his full card tossing capability, so it's decided that the two of them have to have a match against each other to prove whether or not Leonard has the talent he claims. So yeah, it is so awesome to see Leonard legitimately be the best at something and win the respect of everyone. It's like Charlie Brown or Dustin Henderson earning respect, When they do,
right.
It's just so awesome. And keep in mind, Leonard actually does manage to get the best of everyone here, from the three popular jocks, Taylor, Tyler, and Trevor, to a grown adult who in his youth managed to toss a car from the top of a frickin' water tower. And semi-spoiler, he does manage to beat Scott in probably the only time in the entire series, by pulling the exact same knock cards out of the circle move, frickin' blindfolded no less. Leonard, you are an inspiration to us all. And the funny thing is, this episode's moral is, as you may have guessed, don't be a self-righteous prick when you're the best at something. With great power comes great responsibility, yada yada. And while I don't necessarily think Leonard is in the right for the ego he develops, considering how Leonard's been treated by them throughout the series, tell me you didn't enjoy him giving them a taste of their own medicine just a little bit. And how are the laughs in this episode? Well, this one isn't packed with gags, but what it does offer does not disappoint.
I'll win everybody's cards back so quickly we'll still have time to do homework before dinner. Or maybe not.
There you go. Alright then. What are you?
That would have been more impressive if I had more cards.
The tight-ass Principal Strickler being revealed to have been a card-playing punk in his younger days is also kind of funny, and Leonard pushing a reluctant Scott to compete against him to prove he can knock cards out of a circle leads to one of my favorite gags in the entire series.
Scott's scared! Scott's a chicken!
Quack, quack, quack!
That's a
That's a duck sound, but we get your point.
If being too big of a moron to tell the difference between a chicken and a duck weren't degrading enough, there was a previous episode where the other 4th graders were calling Leonard and Scott chicken, and they literally made the clucking sound chickens make. Scott may be a chicken, Lenny, but you're a dumbass. But that's okay, you're our dumbass. I think the last thing I want to praise about this episode is how it teaches kids about famous people they've probably never heard of, like Bing Crosby and also Bernoulli.
Bernoulli, who the heck is that guy? A smart guy back in 1738 who found that all air flows at a certain rate.
While not loaded with gags, it still has some freaking good ones, and more importantly, tosses Leonard his biggest bone in the entire series. No pun intended.
Say I'm the best again.
Shut up, Leonard. You smell like mentholyptus.
Thank you.
Number 3. Tallulahpalooza. And yes, this episode is just as hilarious as it sounds. Scott and Leonard are psyched because there's a pizza and laser tag event at the mall this Friday night. Scott especially because, as he puts it, this is his first laser tag event ever and first pizza that someone didn't drop on the floor. There's just one catch. Principal Strickler has to go to a teacher convention, and his usual pet sitter, namely his mother, blew him off to satisfy her gambling addiction at the casino. So Mary Lou agrees to pet sit, but Leonard and Scott are concerned, fearing the feline might uncover the latter's secret if she stays with them. And before you ask, no, I have no clue why. Pets in this world are pretty strict about their rule of not talking to humans. Remember, Leonard only found out by accident, so it's not like she'd tell Strickler. But at any rate, they've gotta make sure she doesn't find out, while also making sure she doesn't cause trouble in the house, and on top of that, make sure they get to the laser tag and pizza event at the mall. So what's so awesome about this episode? Well, despite being a bit contrived, the premise actually is pretty good and has some of the greatest gags in the entire series. I'd be lying if I said they were the most creative or original I've seen, but they're all just so damn funny.
Now here's the plan. Any questions?
Yeah.
I was afraid of that. Plan B.
Like around the second act, when Mary Lou says she unfortunately can't make the time to drive Leonard and Scott to the mall, instead of just going outside and telling Spot this, he tells him the bad news through a game of charades in the window. Or how about the fact that Strickler actually bullshitted about his teacher's convention and instead just went to a Hawaiian party? Or how about the fact that Mr. Jolly actually writes a rap to try and express his love for the feline?
Moolah, moolah, spend all my moolah, Jula, to buy you something cool that'll make you drool.
No comments. And of course, there's one of the greatest bits in the entire series.
I think I know how to pet a dog, thanks. I've had 3 of them.
You what?
Nothing.
Nothing.
Maybe.
Their names?
Lovey Bear and Cuddly Buns.
Lovey Bear and Cuddly Buns. Let's speak
Awkward.
of them no more.
Fair enough.
Were they softer than me? cuter, sweeter, more lovable.
So as you may have guessed, seeing how most of what I've talked about in this segment is the gags, the reason is the episode kind of pushes its central story of evading the cat and getting to the mall aside in favor of all these great jokes, so there really isn't much to the central story. But again, the jokes themselves are just so good, it really isn't a huge deal. Sometimes it's fine to put more effort into your gags than your stories. That's what made the Looney Tunes so popular. But it doesn't forget the central story either. So you may be wondering, do Leonard and Scott get to go to the mall?
Let me guess, no?
Well, yes and no. Mary Lou eventually says, "Screw the cat, you and Scott are going to the mall." But when Scott sees Tallulah about to eat Pretty Boy, he knows the Helpermans have to do the right thing and be there to keep Tallulah in line. But it pays off as Strickler wins tickets to next month's pizza and laser tag event at the Hawaiian party and gives them to Leonard and Scott as thanks. So the episode's message is the usual: you should always do good deeds for others, even if they're hell on earth to deal with, and they're bound to pay off in the end, yada yada. Simple message, but still a good one for kids. And as for whether or not Tallulah finds out Spot's secret, actually I'm not gonna spoil that for you, but I will say the answer to that does come with some very good laughs. Despite not having as developed of a story as most episodes, it is still packed with some of the show's funniest gags, while also delivering a simple but still very useful message for the kids. But there is still one question racing my mind through all of this.
Might their names be Lovey Bear and Cuddly Buns?
No.
We shall speak of it no more.
Honestly, my parents always say I have a hard time of just letting things go, and to be honest, yeah. I mean, I'm working past that, but dude, let it go, Spot. Come on. Come on, dude. Come on, Spot. Hey, this is why you don't bring up the other dogs. Oof. Though it begs the question, what happened to him? Oh well. Anyway, Final 2, we're almost at the end, so here we go. Let's see the top 2 episodes from Teacher's Pet. But, I mean, considering he said we'll get to that later, probably the holiday special and the movie back-to-back, I'm guessing. And again, haven't watched the full thing, but you get the idea, right? I mean, he said he'd talk about it later, but anyway, let's check it out. Just call it
Number 2. A Dog for All Seasons. See? This was that first Christmas special for the show I mentioned earlier, and on a side note, this was the very first episode of the series that I saw, and the episode that made me fall in love with this show so much. Why? Let's find out. About a week or two before the events of The Blight Before Christmas, Mary Lou's 4th grade class is preparing a school play of A Christmassy Christmas in Christmastown, a Christmas musical that's just as much of your cliched, stereotypical Christmas story as it sounds, and what Fala D. Roosevelt's Elementary performs every year for Christmas. But upon learning that several students in her class actually celebrate other holidays like Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, and what was it again, Ian?
The Tibetan Festival of Yak Butter Sculptures!
So upon making this discovery, Mary Lou realizes that American pop culture has been pretty exclusionary to every religious winter holiday except Christmas. And when it's not, it usually doesn't bring the best results. So she decides it's time for a more progressive holiday approach and asks Strickler if she can write an original musical celebrating all of her students' holiday customs. Strickler reluctantly agrees, but warns her she'll be fired if the musical isn't as revolutionary as A Christmassy Christmas in Christmastown. And needless to say, writing a phenomenal musical that celebrates all religious holidays in just 24 hours is a bit easier said than done, and on top of that, all this talk of diverse holiday customs leads Spot to a very grim realization.
My people don't have a holiday tradition!
So while Mary Lou and Leonard are panicking to top Howard Ashman and Alan Menken in writing great musicals, Spot searches the city to try and figure out what holiday traditions dogs have. So as a liberal who absolutely loves diversity, I think you can see why I adore this episode so much. I mean, I may be wrong, but I don't think there's ever been a Christmas special before about not completely ignoring everybody else's holiday customs in favor of the Yuletide. That's why I think the show was so groundbreaking. And on top of that, it's really awesome to see Mary Lou willing to risk her job just to support the cause of diversification. She really is an awesome teacher, though I'd be lying if I said I didn't kind of laugh at her failed attempts to write the musical.
A mean old miser gets visited by 3 ghosts who help show him the true meaning of Christmas, Hanukkah, Kwanzaa. It's just like a Christmas carol.
A magic, multicultural snowman comes to life.
Snowmen have been done.
A reindeer.
Done.
A kindly Romeo!
Done! It's all been done!
The scene where Scott's trying to find out what dogs' holiday traditions are is pretty funny, too.
I've been putting this thing up for 37 years, and that guy with the crown is definitely not a wise dog.
We do not have any about dogs.
There has to be. All the other animals are covered. The mistletoe mouse, Rudolph the red-nosed reindeer, holiday traditions in Wales. Who's kidding?
Not that whale.
But the best part of the episode is by far the ending. Basically, Spot meets the spirit of World War II dog Rin Tin Tin, voiced by John Mahoney, who takes Spot back in time to show him the Christmas where Leonard first got him. So Spot realizes that dogs do have a holiday custom, bringing joy to their families, bringing them closer together. With his confidence restored, he and Leonard collaborate to help Mary Lou, who, as you may have guessed, failed to write the musical. And no, they don't write an entire musical in the span of just a few hours, but they do write a freaking awesome song playing in the background right now about how winter holidays are important to be diverse because they bring people together.
So our different customs have various names.
The feelings we have are the same.
Despite not having as many laughs as most episodes, this Christmas special may honestly be the most progressive one in all animation history, with a message of diversity, love, and that everyone has some sort of holiday tradition in one way or another. This episode is a frickin' Yuletide gen.
And it do it.
And the number one Teacher's Pet episode
is...
Teacher's Pet the movie. Oh man, when I first heard that my favorite cartoon ever was getting a big screen movie that would be a spoof of my favorite Disney movie, Pinocchio, this is pretty much how I reacted.
Hooray! I am so happy! I am so happy!
And when my mom took my friend and I to see it on its opening day of Friday, January 16th, 2004, by then, I had gone just as wacko as the movie's villain waiting for the glorious day to come. Hell, the second we bought the tickets, I just bolted into that theater like the Flash and just sat there praying for the damn previews to end so I could see my favorite blue dog on the big screen. And after we finished the movie, I was in a state of otherworldly bliss and peace for several hours, like I'd been blessed by the angels above.
That's kind of like me with Top Gun Maverick.
Okay, I'm kind of exaggerating, but I still don't think I've ever been more happy after seeing a movie in my entire life. But anyway, let's get right into the story. With the school year ending, Spot finds he just isn't satisfied with pretending to be a boy any longer and dreams of actually being a real boy just like little Pinocchio. But everyone around him just keeps saying that only puppets with cricket consciences have a shot at that dream. But on the bright side, Strickler reveals that Mary Lou's been nominated for the Teacher of the Year awards and thus gets an all-expense-paid trip to southern sunny Florida and Strickler's very own luxury RV, aka his Winnebago. Spot and Leonard are thrilled they get to kick off their summer together in the Sunshine State and
absolutely no dogs are allowed in my Winnebago ever. I hate dogs!
Right.
Well, that's a doggone shame, but Spot discovers that there is someone besides the Blue Fairy who can allegedly turn him into a real boy, namely a wacko scientist named Dr. Ivan Crank, voiced by Kelsey Grammer, who claims he can mutate animals into human beings. And get this, he just happens to live in the exact area of Florida where Leonard and his mom are heading. So Spot tracks his owners down, dresses as Scott pretending to be on vacation with his family, but have run into a family emergency where all of them, except conveniently Scott, have to go home right away, and on his family's encouragement, Mary Lou agrees to take Scott to Florida with them. But needless to say, Leonard isn't too thrilled when he learns that Spot pretty much just used him for a free Uber to Florida. But Spot convinces him to at least check the doc out, and sure enough, Dr. Crank is able to make his dream come true. Well, kind of. Spot becomes a human man instead of a human boy since they didn't take dog years into consideration, but he is still glad to at least be human. But things kind of go south for the two BFFs from there, which I'll go into later. Okay, so where do I begin with this movie that for my childhood self was like seeing Citizen Kane or The Avengers? How about the humor? Oh man, this movie has such a great, cynical, irreverent, and often self-aware sense of humor that's very similar to The Emperor's New Groove or the Airplane movies. It's easily among the best in the entire Teacher's Pet franchise.
Me, Dr. Crank, me! Hey, smart boy, let me explain how TV works. We can hear them, but they can't hear us.
Thank you.
Hit the road and sing a song about it.
What is it with this family and singing?
I'm starting to feel Von Trapped.
It's alive! That's a good start!
And a lot of the humor comes from the visuals, too. The show did indeed have some animation that had to have been drawn while on LSD, but this movie goes all out with the trickiness, with the expressions, the squash and stretch, and pretty much every other cartoon physic imaginable. The animation here is a stoner's ultimate wet dream. Plus, it's not the only PG-rated theatrical spin-off of a Disney Channel show for nothing.
Well, that was strange.
Okay. Ow?
The songs are pretty good as well, but I don't really have time to go into most of them. But I will say that they're fun, catchy, lively, and really give Leonard's voice actor Sean Fleming, who would grow up to be hit singer Diane Coffey, a chance to showcase his awesome singing talent back when he was still a kid. How about the villain? Dr. Crank is awesome, to say the least. Kelsey Grammer is clearly having just as much fun as Sideshow Bob with this performance.
Now the whole world will see the genius in me, for I stand on the shoulders of giants.
And I also love that he's basically a mix of all three of the main Pinocchio villains, kind of like in the Steve Barron adaptation. He's got some Stromboli, what with him locking our hero up when they try to leave and planning to take him on a world tour to get super rich. The Coachman, what with him threatening to turn little boys into animals. I'll go more into this a bit later. And also Monstro, what with the main character's parental figure being in their clutches and the hero having to save them in the finale. And said hero dies while doing so, only to come back to life immediately afterwards. All making for a much better Pinocchio remake than that abomination with Tom Hanks on Disney+. But the best part of the movie is easily how it's about Spot and Leonard's incredible relationship. As you may know, Leonard's never really been too crazy about Spot dressing as a kid and going to school, but he's tolerated it out of love for his friend. But now that Spot actually is human, Leonard may have run out of patience. So, long story short, Scott and Leonard return to the RV park that night with Scott posing as a family friend of the Leadreadys, who's come to tell her that Scott's family emergency has required him to go home too. Mary Lou and Scott share dinner together, connect, and find they really like each other. So Scott says, Eureka! He and Mary Lou can get married, and thus he and Leonard can still be together as stepson and stepfather. But Leonard understandably isn't too thrilled with that plan, and when Scott gets a little big for his britches, Leonard finally reaches his breaking point.
So maybe you just better leave me and my mom alone!
A friend needs a friend.
That was the different us.
But
you don't need him. You said it yourself. You're not my dog anymore.
Oof.
Never since the Simpsons movie have I ever seen a more depressing "we're done" scene in a theatrical spin-off of a cartoon. But of course, Scott and Leonard are completely miserable without each other, and even separately sing the most beautiful song in all existence.
I know it's been said, everyone needs someone, a loyal companion to share in life's fun. Like a mom and a dad need their bundle of joy. A friend needs a friend, a dog needs a boy. I can't go on with just half of my heart.
Nothing and no one can keep us apart.
It's a permanent bond we can never destroy.
By the way, how does Leonard wind up in Crank's clutches, you may ask? Well, Leonard actually went there himself, thinking the only way that he and Spot could be together was for Dr. Crank to change him into Scott's dog. And Crank naturally had more self-serving purposes to do this.
Of course.
Let that sink in for a second. He was foregoing his chance to be with Leslie, all his human rights, and even his longer lifespan just because he loved Spot so much and was convinced that was the only way he could be with him. That is just awesome. Spot and Leonard are far from the funniest Nathan Lane duo ever, but I definitely think they are the closest. Yes, even more than Timon and Pumbaa. Speaking of Leslie, if you're wondering if she and the other 4th graders or Strickler have anything to offer to the story, with the exception of Ian, who turns out to be Crank's nephew, no.
Really?
They mostly just have a 5-minute cameo at the beginning and a few split-second cameos here and there, and that's it. The story just wasn't one they could offer much for, sadly. Okay, this round's run way too long, so we better wrap
give him a
things
chance,
up.
you know?
I really only have 2 major gripes with the movie. 1, Mary Lou never finds out Spot's secret. Seriously, you let Ian find out, but not Mary Lou? Bad dog, movie. Bad dog. And 2, as I'm sure a lot of you may have noticed, the story is very obviously a satire of incidents involving a transgender person and their unaccepting parents. Hell, Leonard even basically says, if you really love someone, you should let them have their dream even if you don't like it. But the very end has a version of the theme song where Spot basically says, yep, I was wrong to ever dream of being human. Scott Leadready II is dead. I'm just a dog and nothing more. That seems pretty contradictory to the message the movie seemed to be building up to this point. But regardless of that, the movie is just a freaking awesome conclusion to the series and the #1 episode. It's funny, it's emotional, it's heartfelt, and it does have a message that is not botched up at all.
Boy needs a dog. Needs a boy. Needs a dog. Needs a boy. Needs a dog. Needs a boy. Needs a dog. Boy. 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 Boy.
Okay, not sure how to take that bit. Okay. I think that was supposed to be like the series finale, but I can't say for sure. Guess to wrap up loose ends, I guess. Again, I can't say for sure, because, again, never saw the show or the movie, so... But anyway, BC, there we go. Let me know what you guys think, and until next time, like, subscribe for more, let me know what you guys think of the show and the movie, and until next time, adios.